Friday nights in the quieter outskirts of San Diego held their own kind of rhythmicom earned through repetition and the comfort of routine. In a small, weathered single-story house tucked behind neatly trimmed hedges and a wooden fence, 3 men gathered as they always did. Thomas, Marcus, and Eli, 3 retired Marines whose bond ran deeper than words, met here once a month like clockwork. The agenda was simple: steaks on the grill, beers in hand, and stories that never got old. They didn't meet out of nostalgia alone. There was something about these nights, the ritual of gathering under a canopy of Edison bulbs, the soft crackle of the fire pit, the sizzle of meat on the grill. It was grounding. A reminder that they were still here, still whole, still brothers. They had stood side by side in places where peace was a foreign word, where the ground trembled beneath the weight of conflict. But here, at Thomas's house on Larkspur Lane, peace was something they had carved out for themselves. The evening air carried the faint saltiness of the distant Pacific, and the gentle breeze stirred the smoke from the grill, letting it drift lazily across the yard. The fire pit glowed, casting flickering shadows across their weathered faces. Thomas sat back, steady as always, watching the flames with the same calm eyes that had once scanned desert horizons. Marcus, the loudest of the 3, laughed mid-story, a beer bottle gesturing wildly in his hand as he recounted a supply drop gone comically wrong. Eli, the quiet one, poked at the embers with the same piece of rebar he'd been using since their first barbecue together. It was the kind of night that felt untouchable, sacred in its simplicity. But outside the soft halo of their backyard light, something darker crept closer, unseen. Across the street, a porch light flicked on, breaking the shadow of an otherwise still lawn. Behind the curtain of a neighboring house, a figure lingered too long, watching. They were being studied, marked. And for the first time in a long while, their instinct, the ones honed in places where danger wore many masks, did tingle. Maybe it was the beers. Maybe it was the hard-won hope that some places, some moments, could stay untouched. But darkness doesn't respect peace. And at 1 a.m. that peace shattered. 3 sharp knocks echoed through the front door, heavy and deliberate. Bam! 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 The sound was too harsh, too intentional. A voice followed, sharp and commanding. HOA patrol, open up. Marcus froze mid-laugh, confusion flickering across his face. HOA? At 1 in the morning. Eli set down his beer without a sound, his body going still. Thomas stood slowly, rolling his shoulders back like a lion disturbed from rest. His eyes narrowed, focusing on the door. The voice outside barked again. You're in violation of quiet hours. Open this door. Then came the unmistakable sound of a baton snapping open, a thin metallic click that sliced through the night like a blade. Marcus's fists clenched. Eli slipped into the shadows, the porch light going dark with a flick of his fingers. The door shuddered under another heavy strike. They're not waiting, Marcus muttered. Thomas didn't reach for a weapon. Not yet. He stood centered, eyes locked on the door, reading the rhythm of what was about to happen. Another voice joined the first outside. Lower but urgent, barely a whisper. More than 1 man out there. The countdown had begun. Without warning, the door exploded inward. Splinters and dust clouded the air as the frame gave way beneath a violent kick. 3 figures surged into the living room, clad in black hoodies, tactical gloves, and hastily stitched patches that read HOA enforcement. Faces covered, batons raised. They moved with the false confidence of bullies who'd never been challenged. Their leader, the tallest of the 3, stepped forward, shouting accusations about noise complaints and rule violations. His tone wasn't one of authority, it was theater, staged aggression meant to cow and intimidate. But inside that house stood 3 men who had stared down worse. Thomas didn't flinch. Marcus shifted his weight, balanced and ready. Eli, silent as a shadow, cut off the nearest exit with a single step. The fake enforcers had kicked in the wrong door. The wrong house. The wrong men. The leader barked another order, baton swinging in lazy arcs meant to assert dominance. But dominance is only a bluff until it meets real resistance. And in the space of a single breath, the fight was over before it began. Thomas moved first. His body, all controlled power and precision, slammed forward, driving his shoulder into the leader's chest. The man flew backward, crashing into the jagged remains of the doorframe, gasping as the wind left his body. Marcus was next, sidestepping the baton wielder's wild swing. In one smooth motion, he caught the attacker's wrist, twisting hard. The baton clattered to the floor and Marcus shoved the man into the nearest wall, pinning him there with a forearm across the throat. Eli finished it. The third intruder, the one with the chest-mounted camera, barely registered the shift before Eli's beer bottle shattered against his temple, sending him crumpling to the ground. 8 seconds. That was all it took. 8 seconds from the first crash of the door to the last body hitting the floor. No wasted movement. No hesitation. Only the quiet certainty of men who had been here before in other houses, in other fights with stakes far higher. The three invaders lay sprawled across the living room, breathless and broken. One groaned, reaching weakly toward a baton. Thomas nudged it away with his boot. Neighbors, drawn by the sound of the door breaking and the struggle that followed, began stepping out into the street. Porch lights flickered on, hesitant at first, then more and more. Faces peered from behind curtains, cautious and wide-eyed. A woman in a robe, voice shaking, pointed at the battered intruders through the shattered doorway. "That's them. They threatened my son last week. Said he was breaking HOA rules for playing outside after dark." An older man joined her, flashlight clutched tight in one hand. "They slashed my tires. Left a fake citation in my mailbox. I thought it was just some punk kids." The stories poured out: threats, harassment, intimidation. Midnight visits. Demands for compliance fees. Pets gone missing. Tires deflated. Cameras smashed. And all of it under the guise of an HOA patrol. But tonight, the spell had broken. Fear no longer held the street in its grip. Inside the house, Thomas, Marcus, and Eli worked methodically, zip-tying wrists and ankles with the same calm efficiency they'd shown in the fight. They disarmed the invaders, pulling batons, pepper spray, and a second hidden GoPro from the pile of gear. The masks came off, exposing faces twisted with anger, fear, and humiliation. No one needed to ask what came next. The San Diego PD arrived within minutes, their lights painting the street in red and blue. Officers moved with caution at first, weapons drawn, unsure of what scene they were walking into. But the evidence spoke clearly: the broken door, the bruised and zip-tied intruders, the cheap fake badges reading HOA enforcement. One officer, a young sergeant with sharp eyes, addressed Thomas directly. "Step back, sir. We've got it from here." Thomas nodded, his hands visible, his posture relaxed but alert. 3 Marines. That's all you need to know. The officer's expression shifted from suspicion to respect in a heartbeat. Understood. The arrests were swift. The search of the intruder's bag turned up spreadsheets listing addresses, family details, schedules, even notes about which houses had children and when they were home alone. The scope of the operation revealed itself piece by piece. A network of fear and control stitched together under the flimsiest of pretenses. But that network had underestimated the wrong men. The story spread fast. News outlets picked it up by morning. Headlines shouted about backyard justice and veterans shut down fake HOA gang. The images of the arrested enforcers, their cheap gear, their bruised faces, looped across television screens and social media feeds nationwide. And in the quiet neighborhoods of California, others began to speak up. More stories emerged of similar patrols, of nighttime threats, of compliance demands backed by nothing but bluster and violence. But silence, once broken, doesn't mend easily. The ringleader, a disbarred attorney with a history of fraud, was arrested days later. His entire network unraveled beneath the weight of confessions and evidence. 12 fake enforcement teams operated across the state, all of them now exposed, their power broken. When asked by reporters if they considered themselves heroes, Thomas only shrugged. "We were just having a barbecue." Marcus grinned, tossing another beer cap into the bucket by his feet. "They picked the wrong backyard." Eli, true to form, said the least. But his nod toward the broken door frame spoke volumes. Peace returned to Larkspur Lane, not as a gift, but as something reclaimed. A few weeks later, at the next Friday night barbecue, the door had been repaired, but Thomas kept one splintered piece of it mounted above the grill, a reminder, a warning, and a trophy all at once. They never spoke much about that night unless asked. And when they did, the story was told simply, without bravado. Because for men like Thomas, Marcus, and Eli, the fight had never been about making headlines. It had been about drawing the line. A line that said, not here. Not the street. Not these people. And above all, not on our watch.